We arrive now to the final city, that's Lion's Arch, the pirate port, rebuilt once upon a time a distinctly human settlement, the crown of Kryta. The Krytans now sort of retreated further north up to Divinity's Reach, and we instead have a bunch of pirates here at LA. So this is going to be a weird one, because ideally, this whole playlist has had kind of a vanilla slant to it. You know, we're not gliding, we're not using mounts, we're talking very much about early game stuff and early development and release and launch. So it feels like this video should be showing off original Lion's Arch. So if you're out of the loop somehow, the original city, a full city, got destroyed, and then there was a space of about a year in Guild Wars 2 where there was no central city. Lion's Arch was just kind of a wreckage. You could go there and you could explore it, and then slowly it got rebuilt, and suddenly one patch, this new version of Lion's Arch had been implemented. By the way, there we were in the Black Lion headquarters. Great little place that in theory people can go to preview gem store stuff really easily and comfortably. But you would just use the UI, so I've always found that area kind of weird. But it had like a hidden room at the bottom, which recently got sealed off. Pretty fun. And a weird Asura gate down there as well. Lots of weird hints and things. So anyway, yeah, I kind of wish I was showing you original LA here, but the truth is that this is Lion's Arch now. And maybe it's worth it. You know, a big part of why I'm doing this playlist was always just to chronicle elements of the game that I haven't done videos on, and I really feel like I should. And Lion's Arch map completing is as valid as anywhere else, so let's run on through it. This vista always trips me up. You can see what I'm doing, jumping on this car and then these crates. This is not how you get this. I like this a lot, though. It's like the devs are deliberately sneaky. The truth is, you need to abandon your attempt there and come onto this rock, onto this, like, translucent, like, jellyfish kind of roof. And then you can jump. And I guess because that's a translucent surface, it always seems to be something I overlook as the actual route to getting the vista, but there you go. Unfortunately as well, we're not in old LA, and it's also dark at the moment. I don't really like Lion's Arch at night. I like it during the day. People call this Disneyland Lion's Arch now because it's very open plan. It's very kind of clean, feels very touristy and stuff. I think the devs have always been very familiar with the fact that the design here is different, so it's not going to appeal to everyone. There's going to be a lot of people who prefer original LA. There's actually a lot of dialogue and stuff in-game of people whining that the new Lion's Arch isn't good enough, you know, which is the devs kind of, you know, a way of opening a dialogue almost with the community and saying, look, we know it's different. But I actually really do like this place. It's hard to separate sometimes whether you yearn for the past because it was actually better, or just because it's a shake-up and it's different. You know, distance makes the heart grow fonder. I think that works through time and space. God, what a weird sentence. But I think it's true. You know, I remember my initial exploration of this new version, and it felt really fresh, and it felt really modern, and it felt really, really, really great. Not to mention that there is some really brilliant content here. The jumping puzzles, the Karka hunt. So there's a hidden jumping puzzle achievement where you've got to find all these little Karka hatchlings that are hidden around the map. That's some of the best content I've ever played. I particularly recommend people not to glide and not to use mounts and not to read the wiki if you're doing that. It's a hell of a trip doing that. And it will really get you familiar with this version of the Pirate Town. I do feel it's worth having videos of the original version of the city as well. You can find them. They've actually ended up one in particular has ended up a very popular video over the years, just because when we heard that Lion's Arch was getting destroyed, I did go out of my way to do a tour of it as it was before it got destroyed, and I waited a whole year before then posting it. And so it's like this nostalgia bomb video, which I'm really happy I did actually, because it's one of the only ways you can sort of see a lot of those early areas. Unfortunately, that video is not a map completion tour, though. How I wish it was a map completion tour. The thing is, it's only taken me until now, 2020, to realize that there might be some value in doing a full map completion tour, and I probably do have things to talk about every step of the way, and that post-commentary might work and all these things. I never, up until now, really thought that this series would be a good idea, not until about a year ago when we started collecting footage, so yeah, unfortunately, I do have a tour. It's not a completely comprehensive thing. And the other side of it as well is, I think this gets an undue amount of discussion in the community. An undue amount of whining or, you know, people clamoring for the past. Because the truth is this, New Lion's Arch is still giving you the majority old experience. What do I mean by that? Well, right now, this cave was there in the original LA. It didn't change in the transition. All these like peripheral areas and wilderness, I use the word wilderness, maybe that's a little bit too strong. But these places are all still here. And in fact, many of them have been expanded on. All those Skrit in that cave and the Tri-Key chest, they weren't there originally, but they're new features, new reasons to come here. I love just the idea that all the weird oddballs, strange items like the Hall of Monuments, Portal Stone and stuff can be purchased from Skrit that have gathered there. It's a very, very clever idea. And in addition to that as well, all the storyline that destroyed Old Lion's Arch during Season 1 with the Breachmaker here and stuff, those were really powerful experiences. And they actually expanded on the map. Like, there's loads of little caves and things that you can explore now that were not here at Vanilla. And that's because the devs did this big, bold thing. You know, I think ArenaNet, I view Season 1 as a failure in a lot of ways. And I view it as something that crippled the game in a lot of ways. And if I could make the decision to have the devs not do it, I would make that decision. I think that those were really, really important years for Guild Wars 2's lifespan that were kind of squandered in a way. So I think a lot of those things about Season 1, but I also think good on the studio, to be honest, because it's such a crazy, bold, ridiculous move that they made. And they don't get enough credit for that, I don't think. By the way, that Mariner plaque there, actually, I think is based on the September 11th monument over in the States. Obviously, they've got like a monument where the World Trade Centers used to be, I think. Didn't they build a new World Trade Center as well? Not too familiar with that stuff. As someone who's not an American, I don't think I have quite a connection to that event as many people do. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that that's like a little nod to that, I seem to remember. Also, really cool landmark we just walked past there. That is the Tengu Wall. That, once again, is the Dominion of Winds. And it's closed off. It's always been closed off. At launch, you could speak to the Tengu a little bit about what was behind, similar to when maybe you interact with them in Keswick or in Caledon. But what was really quite fascinating... Oh, and I got to stop myself here as well. Old Lion's Arch, so that POI. Check this out. Here's Shaman's historical guide. This is how the two games overlap. Yes, what you know of as Lion's Arch in Guild Wars 2 is not really Lion's Arch at all. It's way to the north and uphill. The true Lion's Arch that we used to spend so much time at in Guild Wars 1 is flooded at the bottom of the bay, the idea being that the tsunami brought all this water in and it's never fully receded since Ore rose up. There's lots of stuff that kind of doesn't make sense there in the lore. Like, before Ore sunk in the Cataclysm, Lion's Arch was here, and it wasn't flooded. So, like, but then when we raise it back up, it floods Lion's Arch. How does that work? Maybe Zaitan rose it much higher than it had ever been before. But then that doesn't explain why so much stuff is still sunken around there, like Abaddon's temple and stuff. So best not to think about it too much, but it is really cool. And it's another thing, like I mentioned in the Snowden episode, a lot of the regions that I'm in Guild Wars 2 is actually much more north compared to where we were in Guild Wars 1, even up to the very location of Lion's Arch. And in the water here, you can find a POI we just got, the Breachmaker, which is sort of crashed in this great chasm down there. I feel like you used to have to swim down to get the point of interest, but now you just grab it high up, and you might not even know what the wreckage of the Breachmaker is referring to. But yeah, it's referring to a giant pit with a drill, where the Season 1 events took place. You at least have to swim down there for Living World updates, so I mean, I think that's fine. You can ask for too much more than that. There is a reason to go down. Here is a weird place to revisit, because this is where Fractals used to start. And I specifically look over there so that you guys can enjoy that. Of course, you don't start Fractals there now. You start at a very different portal, which looks way cooler. It's also a big place for the personal story, a boat taking you to Claw Island there. You've also got the Kabaya Mariner plaques, which is one of the only ways in which the game really looks at the story of one of the novels, Sea of Sorrows. Kind of get to explore around Tyria, gathering those. And another post-game thing here. This, airship, blue airship with the Black Lion Trading Company. Oh, wait. That's not the Black Lion Company, is it? Isn't that just the Lion's Arch logo? And the Lion Guard? Anyway, plastered on the side of, like, the Zeppelin section of the airship. The balloon bit, shall we say. And that's super new. That is the airship that actually takes you to Path of Fire. If you're a new player, that's a really important airship for a lot of people, because they like to rush and get the mounts really quickly, so they're going to board that airship straight away. Then we have the Lighthouse, which is, you know, has so much history. There was a version of the Lighthouse in Guild Wars 1, versions in Guild Wars 2, got destroyed and rebuilt. Listen to the sound effects here. Listen to how eerie that is. I love the sound effects at the technology for the new airship, for the new Lighthouse, sorry. I think it's so cool, and you're kind of forced to walk all the way up here to get the vista as well. I suppose with the sky scale, you could kind of clamber your way up. But I love this long, winding walk with the creepy-sounding lighthouse. Actually, probably one of my favorite sound effects in the whole game. And I'm not quite sure whether there's any real story about why the technology here is what it is. Kind of pains me to skip that vista on that one, because I really like that vista. I love anywhere where you're super high up. And, of course, some diving goggles to jump down into the water. You've got to be a bit careful about this if you're not gliding. There's actually a threat of death here. So yeah, one of the underwater caves is near here. Lots of stuff. To go back to the Tengu wall, which I never quite finished talking about before. Yeah, one of the things most people remember is that during the events of Season 1, when the city's under attack, the Tengu actually friendly fired upon us, the player base. They had all of these, like, arrows getting rained down to keep Scarlet's armies away. And they did not open their walls to help people in. You know, so that's one of the big sides of the Tengu, that it's not just a development thing. Oh, we can't go behind the wall because they never had time to implement them or whatever. They really seriously justified it in the lore. Like, they're an isolationist people. They are very separate. And that doesn't just mean live and let live. That means actively defending their isolation. And a touch of xenophobia maybe in there as well. Which you might say is justified, considering how they were treated and subjugated and kicked out of the lands to the south, Cantha. So anyway, those are all going to be some really interesting stories, I hope, going forwards into the next expansion. These whole fields here, you know, they're a little bit different with the rework because that's a white stone bridge now instead of like a cobbled together piratey bridge built out of flotsam. Mostly it's all the same. I have some strong memories of this area from when the Karka attacked in one of the very first post-game updates, before they'd even called it Living World, right after that first Halloween. And it was so laggy. There were Karka attacking here and zergs of players, and there was proper fighting. Even though it's a city and there's not usually fighting, there was fighting against the Karka, and it was horrendous. They were all culled out. You couldn't see half the players. You can see half the creatures fighting you. The network latency was insane, and I remember that being a bit miserable. In original Lion's Arch as well, there was a pen over there filled with Zaitian warriors from the Battle Isles, and it looked like they were building something. It looked like that might have been a post-game update. And in the end, actually, yes, the Zaitian are now a part of the game in the most recent expansion, Path of Fire. So that's nice. So that whole Gate Hub Plaza, beautiful. Entrance to the aerodrome there as well. I do wish that they had the technology, or they'd put the time in, I guess, I don't know, one or the other, to have airships fly in and out of that like we saw in one of the trailers. I'd love to be here at Lion's Arch, and sometimes I look at the sky and I see airships. And one of the main reasons for that is because one of the pre-release trailers showed exactly that. It showed Lion's Arch, and the camera pans up, and there's a billion airships all over the sky. Maybe suggesting some kind of arc in the personal story where a ton of airships were going to fly out and assault Zaitan or something, which never ended up being a part of the game. Would have been crazy. Would have been so cool. And they never did it in the end. Nonetheless, I think all these areas are really beautiful. We're kind of in range of another jumping puzzly section as well here. And that is this long bridge corridor here, which looks way cooler in the game now. They're like, come on, guys. The old one, it's all right. But this is way better. This feels like I'm in a city built on a bridge. This is so cool. And I just love looking at all these windows and imagining what's inside them. There's actually a weird Halloween pumpkin that spawns on one of the balconies here that the devs forgot to take out of the game after the festival left. So there was a pumpkin left out, which felt so fitting because that's kind of what happens in real life as well. You know, some people leave a pumpkin around or something and they forget about it. Guild Wars had a similar issue. But all this area is also a jumping puzzle, you know, not just jumping onto this little net here for this vista. I remember doing such a long video with Matt where we were doing this JP when it was newly added to the game. That still feels like a really fresh memory to me. All of this stuff feels really fresh. It's so old now, the revamp of the city, but it feels really clear in my mind. Because it was around the same time the specialization system got added and stuff. It just goes to show how wonky my memory is. So again, we're sort of in similar content to even before the rework. So here is Plaque. Plaque is, once again, an NPC from the Ghost of Ascalon story. This is where he is in-game. You guys might not recognize that. That's a little treat for those of you guys who have read the book. And he gives you this Charzuka, which allows you to jump over to this island and trigger this vista. Now, one of the reasons that's really special to me, first of all, it's just a cool interaction to get a vista where most vistas do not have a cool interaction, so that's nice. But this is really special to me because in the pre-release, in one of the betas, I used that. Once you collect it, you're on a time limit before it despawns in your hand, and you also can't leave Lion's Arch itself. But what you can do is grab it, waypoint to a totally different area of Lion's Arch, sprint, and then use it to jump a big gap. And you could do it by doing all of that. You could break into a jumping puzzle on this map, which is the last location we're going to be visiting. And is amazing, by the way. But you could use it to break into that jumping puzzle before the devs wanted anyone in there. And I remember doing a video on that. So yeah, that was very, very, very awesome. Then you've got just all these outlying areas. The inn that we're next to here is called the Lion's Shadow, or Lion's Arch's Shadow, which I've always thought is the most amazing name for like a shady kind of pub. Yeah, the Lion's Shadow Bed and Breakfast. Look at that. What a cool name for an inn that is actually just slightly outside of Lion's Arch. There used to be an exit to the map into Gendarin, if I remember rightly, up that road, but that's no longer there. But the inn itself, you can kind of sneak into. There's a jumping puzzle up there as well with climbing up the back of a cave that I used to do for dailies super regularly because it was in a city, so there'd never be any combat. It was always easy to waypoint to. And you can speak to weird just citizens on the fringe of society. Brilliant place here as well, the Guild Initiative. This wasn't here in original LA, but it's an amazing place to go to. Of course, because Guild Initiative came in with the guild revamps, preparing for the Heart of Thorns release. And it's in there you can meet Dougal Keen. Down in the waters nearby is a new adventure. That is a super new update when the skimmer became available to go underwater. They just updated that, so that's pretty nice. I like that area. But all these rock formations and so on, they all feel very familiar to me. It all still feels super vanilla. This area is kind of weird. It's like a wedding plaza. And you'll see, I see a player here in a chair that is role-playing as a Living World character, Kanak, which is kind of funny. I don't know how long he just sits here, but yeah, he seems to be idling around. Nice little touch. But that's like a wedding area. Now, this game's never added a full-on wedding feature. I know that a lot of MMOs do go for that kind of thing. I don't know whether ArenaNet just sort of decided it should be there for role players. I don't know how big the role-playing community is or how much use that's had over time, but it is there. This cave is an entrance into the Lornar's Pass and right next to the Dermot Priory, which is actually super close to Lion's Arch. And I can't remember whether that existed on the initial implementation. This location used to have a mower race at it. Man, there's just so much to talk about on this map because it's like we can do 2 tours at once in terms of the commentary. There's an Easter egg here in this field. I think it's a reference to Zelda or something. But you know how the foliage and stuff moves as you walk through it in this game? If you run into the right stalk, I don't know where it is, but you hear like a scream. There's like a scream sound, like the stalk doesn't like that you're walking into it. I don't know whether that's supposed to be like, and there you can see that's the mountain that the Dermot Priory is built into. It's kind of nice. I wish I could see the visual keep from it. But yeah, the idea that one of them screaming, I don't know whether that was implemented at Halloween or something, and just they forgot to take it out like that pumpkin. And so here's the jumping puzzle. I love the entrance to this. Super sneaky. You got to go into the garden of that house, and the only way through is jumping on the hay bales. Then from the garden is a hidden little bush that takes you into this section, and then there's another hidden section. All of it climbing you up, which will give us our final vista. So, a hell of a place, Lion's Arch. That's not even to mention some of the old jumping puzzles, like the Mario pipe jumping puzzle. Lots of fun. But this one's a good one. Waiden's Revenge. Lots of voice acting from a man who's unfortunately passed away, and the devs kind of honored him. That back wall there has those little bushes as well, which I think are supposed to look really big. You know, they give you the impression that the world is bigger than it is. Similar to what they did in Timberline. I went on a bit of a talk about that on that episode of the playlist. But there you have it, guys. So that is Lion's Arch. That's the 6 of the cities. There are some other locations like Ebonhawk and Fort Trinity, but they're kind of integrated into other maps. So we'll get to them at other times in the playlist. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks very much for watching. Give me your memories of Lion's Arch and weigh in on the debate, new or old. And we'll see what you'll think. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.